This oddly looking dough sausage is probably the last tip that you need to fully master and fall in love with sourdough bread making. And save some money! Brace yourself, because after watching this video, you will start making beautiful and tasty sourdough bread with excellent oven spring and unseen fluffiness. Say bye-bye to overly sticky doughs that make you cry, and even worse, cry fart. Let me explain. The hardest part of sourdough bread making is to nail the fermentation process. When working with sourdough, you are cultivating a cocktail of wild yeast and bacteria. Hold on a second. Wild? Yep. You are cultivating natural microorganisms that are on the flour, in the air, and everywhere on your skin. It's a balance that's very often in favor of the bacterial part of your sourdough starter. The bacteria makes your dough sour. Ah, that's why it's called sourdough. The yeast, on the other hand, makes your dough fluffy. To help to create the perfect balance between yeast and bacteria, some bakers are resorting to really drastic measures. They resort to feeding their starter several times per day. Wow, I'm totally feeding my starter once every 4 hours, and it's so super active. Me personally, I'm way too lazy to do that, unfortunately. In fact, I am so lazy that I'm not even wearing pants today. Oops. Okay, I know, this all sounds quite cumbersome. This is so complicated, but I got you covered. We're gonna head to my whiteboard real quick, and then I'll show you a way simpler approach. A regular sourdough starter is typically at the hydration of 100%. That means you have equal parts of flour and water. Depending on your sourdough starter, this is unique for everyone, you sometimes have very strong vinegary notes. By switching your starter to a hydration of 500%, you will change the taste of your sourdough starter and eliminate the vinegary notes. You will favor those bacteria that produce dairy notes. Your starter is gonna start tasting like mild yogurt. On a pH scale, it's more sour than the starter at 100%. But in my experience, it's not perceived as sour as the starter that has vinegary notes. It's way more subtle. Me personally, I really love this kind of sourness. Very delicious, and all just achieved by bumping up the water percentage of your starter for a little bit. This is totally mind-blowing. But hold on a second. Now it's getting just a little bit disturbing. I went shopping to get me some extra large adult balloons. That's because I only had the very small ones at home. I then did a test and switched my sourdough starter from 500% hydration to 50% hydration. That's 2 parts of flour and 1 part of water. And holy guacamole, the adult balloons were inflated a lot more by the stiffer starter. I really loved that. Are you following me? Because I think this implies something really cool. And that's my takeaway of this video. By creating a stiffer starter, you have more yeast activity. Your bacteria is no longer as active. And why is this good? If you're a beginner sourdough baker, you're typically facing very sticky doughs. If the dough ferments for too long, the bacteria starts to fully break down your gluten network. You'll just have a sticky mess at your hands. And this is typically not what you want. You will be baking flat pancakes. The stiffer starter is a total game changer in that regard. You will get a lot more oven spring and a lot more fluffy crumbs. This is really cool, right? Are you as excited about this as I am? Okay, enough theory. Let me show you how to make this magical stiff starter. It's going to allow you to bake amazing, great tasting sourdough bread in no time. To make a stiff starter, you just take your existing starter, 10 grams, and feed that with 10 grams of water. I like to use a spoon and dissolve that a little bit. This way the yeast can be lazy and doesn't have to move as much later in your starter. Your starter needs food, so then we will be adding 20 grams of flour next. I like to use a mix of 50% whole wheat and 50% plain white flour. The whole wheat is great because it contains extra nutrients which your starter needs. Then start kneading it together. Now this is the downside. This is really painful with a stiff starter. It's so dry and crumbly. At some point I start kneading it on my working bench. Then ultimately I'm rolling it into this magic big dough sausage. Is the sausage required? Nope. But please show some loaf to Germany. We love sausages. In fact, we probably have 300 sayings that include sausages. If it gets very serious, we're saying now it goes around the sausage. Jetzt geht es die Wurst. Seriously, if you hear a German saying that, better brace yourself. Once the sausage has been made, I take my starter and I place it in a jar. I close that, but not airtight. Side note, to get rid of all the vinegary notes, This depends a little bit on your starter. Try making a liquid starter first. Then convert that liquid starter into a stiff starter. It always takes some time for the microorganisms to adapt. That's why I recommend that you feed your stiff starter for 3 days once per day using the same technique that I described before. Then your transformation is going to be complete. You have shifted the tide towards your yeast. Say hello to fluffy bread. You know that your stiff starter is ready to be used for making a bread when you look at the bottom of your jar and you see some pockets of air in the dough. Then just proceed and make your bread dough. Are you excited to bake with your stiff starter? You definitely should be, because it's awesome. So this is how you do it. Now, to get started, we are adding 300 grams of water, followed by 80 grams of our stiff starter. I dissolve the starter a bit by stirring in the bowl. This makes mixing a lot easier. Afterwards, I add 8 grams of salt, followed by 400 grams of flour. And you can go as cheap as you like here. In fact, it works with the cheapest flour that you can find. And I'm not saying that cheap is bad, not always at least. It's just that in some regions on this planet, the flour doesn't have as much gluten as in other parts. So I think this is really cool. Wheat flour with a lower protein content is typically way more affordable. If it's summertime, I'm using around 10% starter. In winter times, I'm opting for 20%. That's 40 grams in summer times compared to 80 grams in winter times. If you don't have seasons where you live, then opt for a 10% as well. Seriously, I think it's super awesome that there are so many subscribers from all around the globe. This really makes this such an amazing community. Thank you. Then proceed and knead everything together. You can totally knead by hand. In case you want to do so, please check out my 5 tips to create incredible dough strength. If you're kneading with a stand mixer, knead until you see that your dough lets go of the bowl. Once your dough roughly doubled in size, you're ready to proceed and shape your dough. Then afterwards proof it and bake it. I didn't want this video to be too long. If this sounds like mumbo jumbo to you, please check out my full sourdough masterclass, which contains all the steps in detail. Linking it right here. And if you did everything right, then you will be rewarded with this beautiful masterpiece. Now, you will have just a tiny bit of sourdough starter left. Take that and place it in your fridge. It's gonna be good there for several months. Seriously, months, several months. I give up. Before making your next bread dough, take out the starter from the fridge and feed it one more time. For 10 grams of starter, that's 20 grams of water and 40 grams of flour. Note you might need to adjust those values depending on how much starter you actually need. This sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? Everything has a price, my friend. Okay, sorry, that was a little creepy. You will make more fluffy bread with better oven spring using this method. But, did you just say but? On the downside, from my perspective, you are reducing the tang, the sourness that your final bread has. If you want to have more tang, then you need to have more bacterial fermentation. This, however, also means that you need to get yourself a flour which has a higher protein content. This way, your flour can withstand the fermentation for a longer period of time. This flour is typically a little bit more expensive. That's because the wheat needs to have better growing conditions, typically more sunlight. So one more time, with the stiffer starter, you don't need to get yourself expensive bread flour. If you're chasing the sour tang, you definitely have to do that. Hope that makes sense. Now please, show me some loaf. Did he really do it again? And let me know your experience with stiffer starters in the comments section down below. One of you gets a chance to win a cool shirt. I hope you can see it, like this one. If you want to support me, feel free to get yourself some of my merch, which is really delicious baking merch. Simply follow the link in the description or head to shop.the-bread-code.io. Thanks for watching, and may the gluten be with you. I can't get up.